Traumatic experiences in early childhood, such as physical and sexual abuse, as well as neglect, are well known to greatly increase the risk for a number of psychiatric disorders in adulthood. There is loads of evidence showing that childhood trauma compromises the way that our brain processes information, making us more susceptible to schizophrenia, major depression, bipolar mood disorder, PTSD, and of course, substance use disorders, otherwise known as addiction. Particularly, the link between trauma exposure and substance abuse has been very well established. For example, in the National Survey of Adolescents, which was conducted in the United States, it was shown that teens who had experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, or assault were 3 times more likely to report past or current substance abuse than those without a history of such trauma. Per the esteemed Dr. Gabor Mate, addiction is manifested in any behavior that a person craves, finds temporary relief in, or pleasure in, but suffers negative consequences as a result of, and yet has difficulty giving up. This definition is not restricted to drugs, but could include almost any human behavior, from sex to eating to shopping to gambling to extreme sports to TV or even compulsive internet use. The list is endless. Traumatic experiences increase the risk of substance use disorders because of attempts to self-medicate or to dampen mood symptoms associated with the pain caused by the trauma. It's as simple as that. Usually, PTSD is experienced when someone goes through a particularly traumatic event or a series of events not exceeding 3 years, such as a short war. Something important to note is that when someone has been exposed to trauma over an extended period of time, sometimes for their whole lives, they can develop something which is called CPTSD, or Critical Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. CPTSD is an elevated, more deep-rooted form of PTSD. It is much more challenging to treat and requires a more complex approach. Don't forget, we can still treat it. I once heard a renowned traumatologist, John Briere, quip that if CPTSD were ever given its due, then the latest version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders would shrink from the size of a dictionary to the size of a thin pamphlet. In other words, the role of a traumatized childhood in most adult psychological disorders is huge. Now, we've witnessed many clients with CPTSD being misdiagnosed with various anxiety and depressive disorders. Even worse, many of them are also unfairly and incorrectly labeled with bipolar, narcissistic, codependent, autistic spectrum, and borderline personality disorders. Further confusion also arises in the case of attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or ADHD, as well as obsessive compulsive disorder, both of which are sometimes more accurately described as a fixated flight response to trauma. In other words, your brain is prepping you to run away from danger that's not really there. This is also true of attention deficit disorder, or ADD, and some depressive and dissociative disorders, which can more accurately be described as a fixated freeze response to trauma, which is similar to the response of a deer being caught in headlights, where you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go. It would be very wrong of me to say that CPTSD does not sometimes co-occur with these disorders. However, we must be very, very careful not to confuse the symptoms of each. The key point is that these labels are often incomplete and unnecessarily shaming descriptions of what the trauma survivor is actually going through. So let's not do this anymore, and let's start helping these survivors to get better.